pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This morning, I ask that everyone silence your phones, smart devices. I do ask that all committee members wait to be recognized to speak and to activate your microphones before speaking and turning them back off when you are complete. There are two public comment points in the meeting. The first is the action items, and the second is for comments of a general nature. You may provide your public comments in person, virtually over Zoom, or in advance by email or phone message. We want this and all future meetings to be accessible to all participants. You may join by computer, tablet, or phone. If you need accommodations to participate in the future, please contact Metro Plan Orlando. I'll now turn it over to Ms. Larson for agenda review.
Good morning, Chair and committee members. First, we wanted to bring a couple events to your attention. First off is our September 29th MTP public meeting from 5 to 7 p.m. This will be held at the Pine Hills Multicultural Center on West Colonial Drive. This meeting will be an open house style meeting where attendees can talk directly to staff who've been working on the MTP, so they can ask questions and provide comments back on the long range plan. And this event is open to the public, so please attend and please encourage your residents to attend. Next up is October 25th, the Bike 5 Cities event, which is sponsored by Bike Walk Central Florida. Several of you are participating in that. There's two options. Bike 5 Cities, one is the 30-mile route, which includes Orlando, Winter Park, Eatonville, Maitland, and Castleberry. And then the other option is the 10-mile route, which is from Winter Park to Orlando. On November 14th is the Florida Bicycle Association Summit, and that will be held in Winter Garden in Claremont. So, several good ways to get active as the weather gets cooler. Also an announcement, Metro Plan Orlando has received a grant under the Federal Highway Administration for a prioritization process pilot program, PPPP or 4P, for $2 million. The grant will enable a collaboration between Metro Plan Orlando, FDOT District 5, UCF, and a consultant to develop and implement a pilot prioritization process that is a model for TSMO strategies. It will provide a public interface to examine the impacts of TSMO improvements, and it will increase the effectiveness of public engagement in prioritizing projects. So if you have any questions, Eric Hill from staff is here if you have any questions for him later. Also, next week at the September 10th Metro Plan Orlando board meeting, our board will be asked to approve updates to the current Title VI non-discrimination and limited English proficiency plan, as well as the public participation plan. The updated plans will eliminate references to map tools that the federal government is no longer using, and update demographic information based on latest census figures, and removed outdated information. Both plans were presented to all of the committees and the board members last year. So they are essentially the same. So we didn't want to bog down our meeting cycle with that. Links to the updated documents will be included in the September board packet. So if you are curious about that, you can take a look. And the approvals will be requested as a part of the consent agenda. If you have any questions about these updates, you can contact our public information manager, Mary Ann Horn. And that is the end of my updates.
So next we have Mr. Wilson, who will be.
So, yes, safety moment.
Right, it's a safety moment.
Thank you. Good morning. So August, which we just wrapped up, it was Stop on Red month. And the consequences of not stopping at red lights, I think, are pretty obvious to everyone. This is from a traffic camera from Florida DOT as they were kicking off their red light campaign last month. In our area, our 3-county area, we have about 176 serious or fatal crashes per year that involve red light running. In some of them, it's actually called out as to one of the drivers ran a red light, but there are other crashes where we know somebody ran a red light, but since they can't assign it to one driver or the other, we still include those. That's about 12% of our serious crashes in our area. Not surprisingly, younger drivers are overrepresented in that risk. You know, there are obvious things that we can do to reduce our risk of doing that, you know, not being distracted, of course. But the thing that people may not think about is the connection between speed and red light running. The yellow signal phase is timed based on the posted speed so that you have adequate stopping distance. So if you're going faster than that posted speed, so let's say you're going 45 miles an hour in a 35 zone, that's an additional 114 feet of stopping distance. 76 of that is just the braking distance. And so that could put you well into that intersection when the light changes. So going the speed limit is going to reduce your risk of accidentally running a red light. And that concludes my safety moment for this month. Be happy to take any questions.
Regarding the speed and the stopping, where we live, Clarkona Coe Road, the speed limit was lowered. And the perception of almost everyone that drives that road is they lowered the speed limit too low. So it's a 4-lane major road. People are commuting, and the speed limit's 40 miles an hour. It seems like it's made it worse, and we're having more people running red lights. You know, now you've got some people doing 40, some people doing 50, 55. I mean, people do 60 down that road. So it seems like there's a big range of speed. And because of that, and what you're talking about there, we're having more, not less. It's made it riskier, not safer. Is there something about the appropriateness of the speed for the road in that, to that, you know, they're going 45 and a 35 because someone put it at 35 and drivers don't perceive it's an appropriate speed.
Right. Not a traffic engineer, but I would think that, yeah, given that reality that people are not adhering to it and the past of it, that perhaps the signal timing, and I don't know, of course, don't know if they changed the signal timing to correspond, right? So, yeah.
It doesn't seem like it was well thought out. Just one day, the signs all changed and the speed limit changed, and they didn't do any enforcement. There's no enforcement. So people are just going even faster above the stated speed limit.
Right.
What is the phase length for the signal based on speed? If it's 35, 45, 55, 25?
I believe there's some variation in there. That's more of a question for your traffic operations people, which would not be me.
Is it longer?
Well, yes, it would get longer as the speed goes up because you need more stopping distance. And so you need more reaction time to correspond. Yep.
Any more questions? Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Appreciate it. We will now move to our agency reports. First is Mr. Scarf with FDOT District 5. Mr. Scarf, you're up.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the MAC Committee. A few updates for you this morning. First being, we have a public hearing that's occurring in Osceola County. And that is for State Road 60 from Prairie Lake Road to Florida's Turnpike. That's a PD&E study. Again, the project details that will evaluate improvements to the state route. And in total, it's 19.3 miles. That'll be occurring virtually on October 14th and then in person on October 15th. Presentation will begin at 6 p.m. and the location is the Westgate River Ranch Resort and Rodeo. I just want to point out a couple of recently completed projects since we were last together. State Road 436 from north of Old Cheney Highway to south of University Park Drive. That received final acceptance on August 1st. That was to repave, speed management, traffic calming, landscaping. We also installed a PHB, and there was a focus on cyclist safety with a separated and designated bicycle facility. So that's completed in your construction report. And then I received a recent update that this project was completed ahead of schedule in Seminole County. That's State Road 46 from US 1792 to Mellonville Avenue. And that received final acceptance on August 15th. And again, this had some multiple aspects to it, widening the sidewalk on the westbound side, as well as, to 10 feet to enhance pedestrian mobility and accommodate bicycles. And a 6-foot wide bicycle lane was also added along the route, creating connectivity to an existing route on Mellonville Avenue. And just of note, that was completed ahead of schedule. And just a reminder, I know that a lot of you have been around here for a bit, but if you're looking for project updates, you have CFL roads. And if you're looking specifically for I-4 Beyond projects, that's the website is right there, the i4beyond.com. And then if you don't find what you're looking for there, you can reach out to me and I'll take a deeper look with the community outreach specialist. And pending questions, that concludes my brief this morning.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Scarf. Next, Ms. Whitten is here today from Lynx. Ms. Whitten.
Good morning. I just have a couple brief updates. Our average daily ridership is around 64,000. That's up about 12% from this time last year. Our highest ridership day remains February 11th. That was at 71,780, and that's our highest ridership since pre-COVID comparison. That is our ridership. And then last week we had a ribbon cutting ceremony for our new Pine Hills Transfer Center. So that facility is now officially open. It's an $18 million facility. It was built with 5.3 million pounds of concrete, 4,100 feet of wiring, and 35,000 pounds of steel. So we're very happy to have it open, and we're getting really positive feedback from our bus drivers and our passengers. And we've had one passenger tell us they're saving 30 minutes in commute time due to the new facility. So that concludes my update, unless there's any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none. Lastly, we have Ms. Williams from Florida's Turnpike Enterprise, who is joining us virtually. Ms. Williams, when you are ready.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you virtually. There was a request by Commissioner Ramos last meeting about the current status of signage for Town of Oakland. We've done some research. We provided a reply, and there's some construction widening projects right now that have moved some of those signs out of place, and we have a process that tracks the signs and makes sure they get put back. And I was not given by the project managers a specific timeline. There are plans to install new southbound signage. We looked at 2 other signs on the northbound side. And when we provided the reply, we got a great response. And I want to thank Commissioner Ramos for a follow-up inquiry. And we got 7 nice photographs with some updated thoughts. So we're looking towards our traffic operations folks to evaluate some of these suggestions to increase signage for Town of Oakland, traveling northbound, looking for larger signs, if I may here paraphrase, putting an overhead at Claremont Winter Garden, and at the 272 exit, Town of Oakland is pretty much what you're going to get when you get off that exit. So all of these detailed requests are being evaluated at this time. So I'll have to come back with an update on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Williams. I really appreciate it that it didn't go in vain, all the legwork I did. It's just that there's, again, 7 big signs that say, welcome to Claremont, welcome to Winter Garden, but yet that's the Town of Oakland exit. So all the constituents, going northbound say there's no signage that says Oakland at all on the turnpikes, but I appreciate it and I hope to see the update soon. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions? Thank you, Ms. Williams. I will now turn it over to Ms. Lisa Smith for roll call.
Yes, good morning. I'll ask all committee members to keep your microphones muted until call. Please say here or present. Smith for Carson,
Present.
Davitt, DeCiccio, Dowless,
Present.
Gardner, Guthrie, Henson,
Here.
Kennedy,
Here.
McCann,
Here.
Ramos,
Present.
Stackett, Sladig,
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Mr. Chair, that concludes the roll call, and we do have a quorum physically present. And we also have a request to excuse Councilman Guthrie's absence from the June 26th MAC meeting. He actually called in and said that he was sick. And then we have a request today from Mayor Sackett for the city of Longwood for an excused absence.
Is there a motion for Councilman Guthrie and Mayor Sackett?
So moved.
First motion by Mayor Henson, second by Mayor Sladix. All in favor?
Aye.
Show that passed. We will now move on to public comments. We will now hear public comments on action items. We ask that you provide your name and address for the record, and please hold public comments to 2 minutes or less. If any members of the public wish to comment and are joining us virtually, please use the raise hand function and you'll be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We will send you a prompt to unmute your mic. If you need accommodations to participate in the future, please contact MetroPlan Orlando. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment?
We do not have any hands raised on the virtual side, and I have not received any requests to speak in person.
Okay, great, thank you. We will now move to action items. We have 2 action items today. Our first action item is approval of the MAC minutes from June 26, 2025. These can be viewed at section 1 in your agenda packets. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move approval.
Motion by Mayor Dallas, second by Mayor Henson. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Next, we'll consider a request to approve the roll forward amendments to the fiscal year 25-26, 29-30 Transportation Improvement Program. Materials are provided in section 2. We will hear from Jason Sartorio of MetroPlan, who will provide us more information. Mr. Sartorio, you have the floor.
Good morning, Chairman and committee members. This morning we have our annual roll forward amendment. This includes projects that had funds that were originally programmed in last year's TIP for fiscal year 2025. These funds were not committed by the end of the fiscal year on June 30th, so they automatically roll forward to fiscal year 26 and FDOT's new adopted 5-year work program, which came out in July. And on our end, we need to amend our TIP to include these project funds so that we can remain consistent with the work program. As many of you know, this is a routine procedure that we go through at this time every year. And additional information is located in section 2 of your agenda packets. With that being said, unless there are any questions, we are asking for your recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Mr. Sartorio?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mayor McCann. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mayor Henson. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. We will now move on to presentations and status reports. We have 2 informational presentations today. Please hold your questions until the presentation ends if possible. For the first presentation, we have a status update on the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan from Ms. Taylor Laurent of MetroPlan Orlando, who will give us information on ongoing activities and next steps. Ms. Laurent.
Thank you so much. So with that, this is going to be one of the last few updates on the MTP as we're nearing the end of the year. But kind of going back to the work that we've completed over the past couple of months, there are a lot of items that we've completed to date and culminated in the draft cost feasible plan, which incorporates all the work that's been completed, including that needs assessment, our transportation to-do list of needs throughout the region, the project prioritization methodology, the order in which we're going to address those projects on our to-do list, followed by the revenue forecasting, what budgets are available to fund these transportation improvements, and then ultimately the funding policy, the investment strategy that we've been working on throughout this calendar year to determine how MPO funds will be used and allocated to these transportation needs. So consensus was reached during our June technical workshops and our June, July committee and advisory committees and board meetings. So every single committee and the technical workshops all recommended the same single funding policy. So it's really exciting to have that level of consensus throughout all of our groups. And this recommended funding policy does include funding directly for those high injury network improvements, urban corridor improvements, or complete streets projects, our TISMO, technology and operations type projects, active transportation, as well as transit capital. So that's really exciting that we have that to be able to move forward with. But then for a little bit of context, that MTP funding policy does apply only to that third funding bucket that we've been talking about throughout this year, third from the left, that navy blue one, for Metro Plan Orlando priorities. But while that's funding policy only applies to one of these funding buckets, there are 4 types of funds that are included and represented within the draft cost feasible plan. So with that, we're going to walk through what each of these funding buckets are and how they're represented within the draft cost feasible plan. Starting with the largest of our buckets, those federal and state funds for state highway system projects, as well as other roads, again, on the state highway system. These are the 2 largest buckets when combined in terms of the funding available within our region. And these are included in a single table within the draft cost feasible plan for state highway system needs for both cost feasible and unfunded needs. Overall, when we look at this in terms of our cost feasible plan, this is the longest of our cost feasible tables because it does have the most funding per year. And these funds, again, must be used on the state highway system and can include transportation improvements such as roadway widenings, urban corridor improvements, operational solutions, bicycle and pedestrian projects, and other types of improvements. That's not an exhaustive list, but again, all limited to the state highway system. Then we have our MPO funding bucket, the federal funds for Metro Plan Orlando priorities. This is what, again, that funding policy is directly applied to. And within the cost feasible plan, these funds are subdivided per that funding policy with cost feasible and unfunded needs lists for each of the funding categories included within that policy. So that includes those high injury network countermeasures, urban corridor improvements and complete streets, TISMO, and active transportation. So as a reminder, this is mostly for your technical staff. They heard this at their TAC meeting, but these projects are ones that when implemented, will be implemented by the local governments via the FDOT local agency program, the LAP program. So it's very important to maintain your certifications to be eligible to receive those funds. And then we have that last category of the funding policy, transit capital. This is where we have a regional transit list that combines our last 2 funding buckets. The MTP funding policy includes those transit capital expenses, which comes from the MPO priorities funding bucket. And then we have those federal transit funding formula funds from the last funding bucket also represented here. So that way this regional transit list not only covers the transit capital that Metro Plan Orlando can fund, but also includes the other federal, state, and local funds that are used for operations, maintenance, and other capital expenses. So we can see the whole entirety of the regional transit needs within one location. And this is inclusive of both bus and rail transit improvements. And while I'm kind of giving you this highlight, all of these lists have been available for your technical staff to be reviewing over the past several weeks, so none of this should be a surprise to them. But if you do have any questions, you can reach out to myself or to your staff about what's going on with each of these cost feasible lists to date. But as you're looking at them and as your technical staff are, the projects are organized in the same way on every single table, beginning with projects that are in progress. We want to make sure that projects that are partially funded within the TIP, say maybe just a design phase, but isn't yet finished or fully programmed, those need to be at the top of the MTP list so that we can finish the projects that we've started, get them from design to construction and implementation. From there, we have the existing and committed projects. These are projects that are fully funded and programmed in the TIP and are there for planning consistency to make sure that our TIP is consistent with our long-range plan. From there, we have the new cost feasible projects, so projects that have not yet been started, but are considered cost feasible within the horizon of this 2050 plan. And then from there, we have the unfunded needs, which are those that we can't yet afford within that 25-year horizon. So while I've highlighted a lot of the MPO funding and state funding items, there are a few needs lists that are coming soon, can be published within the next week or two. And those are inclusive of our interstate highway system and strategic intermodal system projects, the Florida Turnpike Enterprise list, as well as our aviation needs. And then we have also been working with each of your staffs and our other partners throughout the region to make sure that our transportation needs and opportunities project listing for planning consistency is completed as well. And this will include the Central Florida Expressway Authority projects, as well as each of our counties and municipalities' transportation needs as well. So as we look to our next steps, we are nearing the end of this MTP's development cycle. Here in September, we're going to be publishing the entirety of the draft cost feasible plan for review and also publishing the rest of our MTP documentation, all in preparation for our public meeting that Sarah mentioned earlier this morning, which is going to be on September 29th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Multicultural Center here in Orange County. From there, we will be previewing the entirety of the 2050 MTP at your next meeting in your October-November cycle, ultimately working towards adopting the 2050 MTP this December. So with those key milestones, we are on track to meet that adoption date here in December in just a few months. So with that, thank you very much for your time. Does anyone have any questions?
Mayor Henson.
That seems woefully inadequate as far as funding goes. What are the trends? What are the trends in the federal funding?
Are you referring to these dollar amounts?
Yeah.
So these are the annual estimates for what we anticipate to be available within each year over the next 25 years. When we look at that in totality, these do cover a lot more projects than it seems on a per year basis, but this makes it a little easier for us to talk about. As we look all of the revenue sources that we have available, this is why we look at all of these different funding buckets to see what opportunities we have through formula funds or funds that we know are reasonably available, and then identifying other opportunities such as public-private partnerships, local funding sources, discretionary grants to help us address and implement other projects within the region.
Yeah, I was basically asking about the trending. What are the trends year to year? Are they
that I don't have immediately in front of me, but I will look at our, oh, Alex has got it. Never mind.
I'll give you a brief update. So all of the funding estimates you see on this slide were actually developed by the state of Florida's Revenue Estimating Conference. So this is the state's economists that look at the many trends and conditions and project those out. The majority of these funds are in transportation in general, are coming from fuel tax, whether that's diesel or gasoline sales. As you know, there are changes in fleet mix, electric vehicle, but also CAFE standards, corporate average fuel efficiency standards. So that 1 gallon of gas gets us a lot further. The Revenue Estimating Conference and the forecasts that we see over the next 25 years do include those assumptions. So we are seeing a plateauing and a little bit of a decline in fuel consumption, which will then show here in the revenue estimates accordingly. But these are estimates that are agreed upon statewide and again developed in partnership with all the MPOs, Federal Highway Administration, and FDOT.
I'm not disputing the numbers. What I'm concerned with is the trending where the funding's going down and the needs are going up. That's what I'm trying to highlight here.
Yeah, you're not off base there, and I think that's where, as we look at our reasonably available funding sources, that's in federal law, that's what we have to use to develop our cost feasible plan. And I think that's where, as we have in the past, looked for other transportation funding sources, local and other partnerships, as Taylor has mentioned. Even when you look in our transportation improvement program, our 5-year document, there's more local funding than federal and state funding. So this is a drop in the bucket of all transportation funds, but as it relates to developing the federally and state cost feasible plans, these are the revenue estimates. But you're absolutely right. Our needs and our desires outpace our reasonably available funding sources. And that's why many local governments, including Seminole County most recently, have levied the infrastructure sales tax to help kind of move the needle on other transportation needs. But you hit the nail on the head there. We certainly don't have enough revenues to cover the extensive needs that that need to be addressed over the next 25 years.
Any additional questions? Thank you, Ms. Lorraine. Appreciate it. Now we have a status update on the Vision Zero Central Florida from Ms. Laura Bauk of Metro Plan Orlando, who will give us information on ongoing and upcoming safety activities. Ms. Bauk, the floor is yours.
All right. Good morning, Chair, members of the MAC Committee. Good to see you all this morning and share what we have been up to on the Vision Zero and safety front here with staff. I'm going to start off with an update on our first Safe Streets and Roads for All grant that we were awarded back. It says 2022, but it was 23 when we were awarded that $3.8 million grant that, as you may recall, we used to develop and adopt our regional Vision Zero action plan last September. We also developed local action plans for each of the 3 counties and every municipality except for the city of Orlando, which had one as a part of that grant. Also, as a part of that grant, within the grant agreement, we agreed to do a demonstration project in each county within our planning area. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what those look like. So down in Osceola County, the demonstration project that we undertook looked at 5 pedestrian crossing locations throughout the county with different contexts. Some were at signalized locations, some were mid-block, some near schools, to look for safety countermeasures that would be appropriate to incorporate at those specific locations, but also systemically across the county in locations that had a similar context. In Orange County, what the demonstration project involved was the development of a bike safety program that's aimed at middle school students. It's conceptualized right now as a 12-week after-school program, and the initial intent of the demonstration was to both develop the program materials as well as piloting the program. We ended up running into some issues with our instructors for the program, so we were able to work with FHWA to pivot and have the demonstration really focus specifically on developing the program materials. So that effort is mostly complete. We have the curriculum ready, the promotional and evaluation materials. And so now staff is working with local partners throughout the region to look for a location where we can pilot the program initially, and then also for some long-term implementation homes for this type of program. And then up in Seminole County, the demonstration involved deploying near-miss monitoring software. So near-miss crash is not quite a crash, but almost. So we deployed this technology at 15 intersections throughout the county. 9 of them were on the high injury network for Seminole County, and the other 6 were submitted by staff based on their knowledge of them being high-risk areas or areas where they get a lot of customer complaints. And so the intent of this one was to really test that near-miss technology as a potential safety tool in our toolbox to help us reduce fatal and serious injury crashes. So all of the work for these 3 demonstrations has wrapped up. Right now, staff is in the process of incorporating this into our regional safety action plan. The final documentation for each of the demonstrations will be included in the technical appendix for the regional safety action plan. And if you want a copy, just let us know. Something else that we've been working on, and we mentioned previously, was we were planning to roll that Vision Zero hub site under the umbrella of our main Metro Plan Orlando website. We've been working with comms and some of their consultants on getting that effort completed. And at this point, that has happened. So all of the resources from that Vision Zero hub site are now available on our safety page on the Metro Plan Orlando website. Among the resources that continues to be available is this regional crash data dashboard that's been really popular for both our local partners at your various agencies and the public as well, where you can go and see where there are fatal and serious injury crashes over the years within our region. We actually just kicked off an effort to update this dashboard to include crash data from 2023 and 2024. So we're excited about that. We're going to be making a couple of aesthetic improvements to the dashboard as well. I expect to be wrapping up that effort by the end of next month. And then we are also in the midst right now of gearing up to start a task to help us to prepare our first annual report. As I mentioned just now, we adopted that regional action plan last September, so it's about time for the first annual report. As a part of that annual reporting, we will be looking at the crash trends over the last year to see what is changing and how things are moving along. We'll be looking at all of the actions and strategies that were identified in that regional action plan to see where we are in terms of progress on implementation for those actions. And then we'll be also working with our local partners, your staff members, to talk about the actions within their local safety action plans and how they're progressing with those and how we can assist them as a region. And then we'll be looking at sort of next steps and lessons learned that we can all start thinking about as we're incorporating those into our next major update for the plan. Very tiny on this slide, we also show the performance measures that we identified in the safety action plan. So we'll be pulling the data for each of those measures and reporting out on what that looks like as well. Speaking of thinking about where we are with our actions within the safety action plan, we had 34 individual actions that we identified within the regional action plan, and these 14 we've either completed or have made significant progress on. So we're really proud of that. A couple that I'll highlight relate back to the MTP, and Taylor just did a great presentation on where we are with that. One of the major efforts as we were wrapping up the safety action plan development was taking those 330 or so projects that we had from all of the action plans together and making sure we incorporated those into our needs assessment for the MTP update. So that was accomplished. We were able to incorporate some additional safety considerations into how we prioritize the project. And then, as Taylor showed in her presentation, in our new funding plan, we have that chunk of funds that goes to our high injury network or safety projects, so we can really start moving on implementing those projects. So we're pretty proud of. It's been a big effort with us and all of your staff throughout the region to do that needs assessment and get that MTP update. So we're proud of being able to have incorporated all of this safety considerations into that in our long range planning process. But much more work to be done. These are the other 20 actions from the safety action plan that we need to get started on. We're finishing up year 1 of 5, so I think we're making good progress. The ones that I have highlighted here on this slide are sort of our on deck actions that we plan to move on next. A couple that I will highlight. First is the formalizing target speed setting. As we've mentioned before, speeding is among the major causes of a lot of the fatal and serious injury crashes in the region. So a lot of the actions focus on how we can manage speeds in the region. At our next task force meeting in a couple of weeks, we're going to be working through a target speed setting exercise with attendees and then talking together about how we can potentially formalize some guidance for target speed setting, here in the region. And then that next bullet down, the piloting using signal timing to regulate our speeds. As you're all aware, we've had a signal retiming program here in the region for a long time. In my time managing that program, there was never a goal of managing speeds as the reason why we're doing the retiming, but we want to explore that. So we're working with local partners who are interested in piloting some corridors that we can look at how we can use that tool as a means of managing speed. So more to come on that. And we will just continue working through our actions, in part supported by a second Safe Streets and Roads for All grant that we were notified of award last November. We've been working with our FHWA point of contact over the last couple of months on the grant agreement for that award. We've submitted our draft, and so right now we're just waiting on comments back from FHWA, hoping to be able to execute that in the next couple of months. With the funding that we receive from that grant, we're planning to continue some of our safety-related outreach and educational policies that we've been doing. We'll be doing some additional data analysis and refinements to help us identify where there are high-risk areas within the region and what countermeasures we may want to look at implementing or testing out to help with those issues. And then we'll be starting off a road safety evaluation program, looking at specifically corridors that are in any of the high injury networks within the region. For those that are not as familiar with RSAs, they're a means of us being able to go out and do some additional field review and analysis to ground truth some of what was seen with the desktop review of those corridors, those priority corridors, and the safety action plans, to go out and do the field reviews, identify what additional safety improvements may need to be incorporated on those corridors, and do some high-level cost estimates to help be able to work those safety projects back into your local CIPs or work programs. So we'll be working with your staff on that program. At the moment, we are accepting requests for corridors to do RSA studies on, and we're going to be funding as many of those as we can. We'll get more on that in a second. We'll be taking all of that we are learning from that additional outreach, from those data analysis and from the RSAs, and eventually wrapping them back into our regional safety action plan and thinking about how we can update it at our next major update in a few years. But more on that RSA program. From a management perspective, we're going to be managing those very similarly to how we did the safety action plans themselves. So we're accepting that list of requests right now. We'll be accepting those through September 30th. So if you want to check with your staff and see if they've already made a request for corridors, if you have any in mind, we're accepting this till September 30th, and then we'll be working through prioritizing the requests that we get, because we do not expect to be able to fund all of them, though we will fund as many as we can. And we are asking for a local project manager to be named. They will be helping us with gathering the appropriate stakeholders to go out and do those field reviews, helping with data collection efforts, and then helping convening the right people at those sort of the meetings that we have after the field review to talk about, okay, what are the countermeasures we're going to move forward with? What's the timeline? Who's responsible? So we're looking forward to moving forward with that program. We'll keep you posted as that continues. We are also continuing to move forward with our safety speaker series that we have quarterly. Our next safety speaker series webinar is going to be next month, mid-month. We do not have a date yet, but we should in the next week or two, so stay tuned for that. But we're going to be focusing on e-micromobility safety. It's been a hot topic here at this advisory committee, as well as our others and the board. I think we're all seeing a big uptick over the last couple of years, and people in particular on e-bikes. So we will be reporting out on a e-micromobility white paper that we're actually wrapping up right now that looks at trends within that space, policies and regulations within the state of Florida and nationwide, and tips for lessons learned for what we can do to better manage those devices in a safe manner. We will also have a presentation from Mike on the impacts of speed on safety with these devices, and then have some sort of tips and tricks for how we can all be better users of e-micromobility devices. And then for our Q4 Vision Zero Safety Speaker Series webinar, we're going to be focusing on the 20 is plenty paradigm, looking at a few locations throughout the state and nationwide that have implemented this sort of program to talk about their lessons learned, and to your point, Commissioner Kennedy, what their sort of best practices and lessons learned when you just change speed limits versus when you do that, you pair that with signal retiming and other engineering countermeasures or traffic calming countermeasures to encourage people to actually slow down, not just signs. Yes. So stay tuned for that, for the date on that one. And then we're also continuing our Vision Zero task force, which meets quarterly. Our next meeting is going to be in a couple weeks. That's going to be an actual in-person meeting. And as I mentioned previously, we're going to be working through that target speed setting exercise at that meeting. I'll actually be presenting some of the RSA findings from a couple RSAs that we did in coordination with FHWA at the beginning of this year. We did one on University Boulevard, just adjacent to UCF's campus. And then we did another down in Osceola County on Poinciana Boulevard. So we'll be reporting out on those findings and sort of getting everyone up to speed on what those RSAs might look like as we embark on a broader program here in the region. And then we'll have our first roundtable on the annual reporting, letting everyone know what to expect and how they can work with us as we develop our annual report for the regional plan and how we can help them with their annual reporting for those local plans. And with that, I'm done. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Kennedy?
This one, I'm good?
You're good.
All right. Thank you. Sorry I was late. And I'm Craig Russell, one of the commissioners over in City Winter Park. And excuse my manners of decorum, but I think I can get those down. Just with the, so the safety measures that are been in, the next up, I noticed, all right. There's a webinar on micromobility safety,
Mhm.
but the plans and the safety measures, one of them that like bike safety program that I believe is going on, like
The demonstration program that we did with Orange County. Mhm.
right.
Yes.
Are there measures or plans to rebrand bike safety into just traveling or safety? Because the fact of the matter is, and we all know it, they have kids in here, like bicycles are going away, and e-bikes, scooters, one wheels, electric skateboards, those are it. And empowering, we did a campaign in our city, partnering with the schools about, because we had a handful of accidents on a main thoroughfare. So we did some education on all fronts, telling the kids how to ride it, telling the drivers how to look out for kids, and just sort of bring attention to that issue. So I guess my question is, are there plans to maybe give more attention to micromobility? There's about, I think it was, I read 32 dozen or 30, a whole bunch of cities that did the 20 or plenty studies across the board, but that's just with cars. It wasn't with e-bikes and one wheels, and it didn't include micromobility as much as I believe it should. Because you start, like you said, without the other countermeasures addressing other things that move up to 20 miles an hour, there's still safety at risk. So I'm kind of babbling, but but the point is that I think as an organization, as a committee, the focus of micromobility should be much more than what I've seen in how it's addressed. There's no criticism anywhere. It's just sort of a point that we're addressing in our city in regards to the safety education. Because every Christmas it's going to be something new and faster and more shiny, and parents don't know how to use that stuff. But we always want to do a bike education, a bicycle education, or bike safety, and kids aren't riding those bikes anymore. So I guess I'd just be remiss if I didn't make that point, and kind of if you could point out where else the micromobility is being addressed, because I want to be a part of that.
So I'll have a couple of answers to that question. First, the e-micro, or sorry, the bike safety program itself, and Mike is gone. Okay. The bike safety program itself, I will say the way that we think about that is, first of all, a lot of the curriculum, a lot of the skills that they're learning are going to be skills that are useful, whether you're on a traditional bike or an e-bike, in terms of the things, how they need to look for other users of the roadway, how they need to think about keeping their vehicle, whether it's a traditional bike or some sort of e-micromobility device, safe, and check it before they get on it. A lot of it carries over regardless of what the device looks like. And also it helps them learn skills that are going to make them safer drivers. So we think that there's applicability across the board. We're also talking about additional tie-ins for e-micromobility specific coursework that we can offer, or we can piggyback on. So it's a thorny issue. It's become much more broad-reaching, I think, over the last 18 months because things have gotten much cheaper. People can afford more of these devices. So it's something that we're continuing to think about. And I would love to talk more with you about the outreach efforts that you are doing within the city, because maybe it's something that we can amplify at the regional level.
It's been great. I have 3 more planned. I'm a teacher by day and commissioner by night. And so with our school news, we did a campaign. I did 4 videos with our police department and the school news. Had the kids make the videos, and just put that out there. Was on News 13 talking about how we were addressing we had no fatalities, but kids are swerving around Winter Park and they're getting hit with cars, and it's a combination of both. Kids not knowing how to operate these devices, and also drivers not expecting what a new road looks like. So it's I love the education component. Yeah, give me a call, we'll connect, because I have a lot of ideas in that, just to, and not to take everybody else's time. Just the rebranding alone of not calling it bike safety, because we all know that, yes, when you operate a bicycle, all those rules of the road you can do on an e-bike, on a one wheel, on those things. But when they hear bike safety, they're thinking, well, it's different, so it's would love to talk a little more about it.
And I will note in the last session, there was legislation that I think people are still interpreting it a little bit, but that made it so that you can potentially require some sort of licensure or certificate to be able to operate those types of vehicles. So we're sort of following closely how that's interpreted and incorporated into policy. So we'll continue to give updates on that, requiring people to maybe have some sort of training before they're allowed to, let's say, ride those types of devices to school, that sort of thing. I think education is a big piece of it. I mean, maybe some legislation about where those types of devices are allowed or speeds, that sort of thing.
And that's where our leadership, we talked about just that point, because it's a parent should have a certification to purchase this device, because then they have to teach their kid on how to use it. When you're a parent and you're buying your 11-year-old son or daughter a scooter and you don't know how to turn it on, that's a safety risk. And so yeah, that's great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Thank you. I really enjoyed that. I'm a highly data-driven person, and I really like the approach you laid out, the balance you're making between innovating and applying best practice. And I see that, especially if you're talking about the near miss. How do you use that data? How do you weigh that against actual accidents? What is more valuable to you? I have, I guess, a economic and aesthetic question for you. We're all being hit with less revenue, as you know, and we're spending money, which I like: street beautification, wider sidewalks, urban design. I mean, we're spending a lot of money to make the cities aesthetically pleasing. And I'm also spending a lot of money on red light cameras. Now I've got speed zone cameras. I've got federal crime tracking systems, more tag readers, everybody's putting in cameras, sensors, monitors, etc. You're doing the same thing. I love this program. But at some point, my intersections, we're spending all this money on landscaping and beautification. And on the poles, sometimes you look out and there's 4 different camera systems. It doesn't make any sense economically for me to buy 6 completely different systems for public safety, for road safety, for speeding, for running red lights, for pedestrian jaywalking, etc. Is there any thought, best practice for all of these different organizations to try to unify to one system? Because, as you know, all of these data points are related. That's what you're looking at: the foot traffic, the cars, the speeding. Are we just going to keep buying more systems? Or at some point, do you see, this industry, I'll call it, do you see all of these coming together to a single system?
That would be lovely. One of the actions that I did not highlight, that's in our the regional safety action plan, is sort of Metro Plan as a data clearinghouse. And we are approached by a lot of vendors, and they're all trying to sell you some sort of package data to help you with something, operations, safety, whatever it may be. So something that we take pretty seriously here at Metro Plan Orlando at the state is talking to those vendors, thinking about where we need data, how we can use it best to achieve our goals, and how we can leverage our space as a regional partner to bring in that data. So I think over time, the data that's available, and as we're able to structure some of our contract with those vendors, we may be able to bring it down to say, hey, we have all the cameras already hooked up into this system that you can access through a Metro Plan Orlando contract. So maybe Winter Park in Orlando, you don't have to have separate. We're not there yet, but I think as we continue to talk, as Metro Plan understand what each of the cities has in place and why, we can talk about, okay, well, what makes sense to sort of roll up to the regional level. So I think it'll take some time, but it's something that we are considering, yeah.
Just to follow up on that, obviously, the vendors have a deep embedded conflict of interest in doing that.
Yes.
So obviously, that's going to have to be driven by public policy.
Mhm.
So that's my comment, but thank you. I
Yeah.
love it. Great.
Any additional questions?
Oh, I have one quick one. You had mentioned the white paper.
Yes.
And then it kind of veered off into, you mentioned the state law. Is there any inclination to make any suggestions on policies? Because I know a lot of, so we're having the discussion about like, oh, should we regulate them, blah, blah, blah. Is that something you guys are gonna delve into?
I am not sure where we are on our legislative priorities for this year. So I cannot answer that yet, but
Okay.
when do we talk about that?
Yeah, because but before all of us go do 500 different things in isolation, it would be helpful to know if there is a unified effort to do something maybe at the state level or regional level.
I think the white paper that's being created, to Laura's point, our board does take up legislative priorities every year. Virginia, our other director who kind of oversees the legislative aspects of the organization. We'll make note of that and see if our board and executive committee have an appetite to prioritize that. But we're hoping, based on the kind of best practice and state of the practice research, it will give us some ideas of how to approach that, whether that's systematically or not. One other item for Commissioner Kennedy, and something that Laura didn't mention, the demonstration project that we did in Seminole County that used the cameras actually did not require any special cameras. It took advantage of the existing CCTV cameras that are already mounted and just tapped in through the IP address and allowed that AI to kind of do that. So there are opportunities to kind of leverage technology vendors versus a goods provider, but there's absolutely some conflict there. Oftentimes, and kind of in addition, that kind of complicates the kind of global use of the technology is the type of money that's being leveraged and paid for. So the CCTV camera versus the red light running camera, the location of those mountings as well, whether they're on the mast arm facing the intersection versus, where red light and license plate reader often, off to the right-hand side or, mounted higher up. So I think those are things that we can explore though and kind of find opportunities. But I did want to mention, as it related to the near miss, that was something, as we were looking at that deployment, it was a really low cost deployment because there was no capital required. And it also allowed the project to move more briskly through the federal process because there were no environmental impacts. So anytime you leverage federal funds, you have to go through the NEPA, National Environmental Protection Act. So you have to go through a very extensive environmental assessment. But because we were leveraging existing capital, we were able to kind of move forward with categorical exclusion. So, but we're always looking through those opportunities to see where we can leverage regional monies, but also share those practices for our local partners to see out in the streets.
Any additional questions? So one follow-up regarding the near miss. So how do you guys how are they evaluated, the near miss crashes?
We basically, we looked at how do they evaluate them in terms of how does it pick up? How does it know it's a near miss? So the software itself is using basically AI, machine learning, to look at all the interactions on the street and identifies what type of user, whether it's a pedestrian, or bicycle, or a car. And then you can set the tolerance for how close they get, and whatever that tolerance is, if they get closer than that, it's a near miss. So it picks those up. And the way that software works is if it detects a near miss, it'll record just that snippet, because probably most of you have in place where you're not allowed to record continuously. So then we'll go back, review, confirm that there was actually a near miss and not some sort of phantom that the AI picked up, and then we aggregated those. Welcome.
Any additional questions? Well, thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you.
Great conversation, great questions. Moving on along to general information, there are several items under general information at section 4 in your agenda packets. Upcoming meetings of interest. The next Metro Plan Orlando board meeting will be on Wednesday, September 10th at 9 a.m. And our next MAC meeting, you will have a month off, so November 6th at 9:30 a.m. So member comments. At this time, do any committee members want to make any final comments? Please unmute yourself when you are recognized. Seeing none, moving on to public comments. If any members of the public wish to comment, please use the raise hand function and you'll be recognized, or dial *9 on your phone keypad. We'll unmute your mic. After you're recognized, please state your name and address for the record and limit your comment to 2 minutes or less. Do we have anyone joining us virtually who would like to make a comment?
We do not have any hands raised on the virtual side, and I have not received any in-person requests.
Great, thank you. I just want to give a quick plug before we adjourn. The Tri-County General Membership Meeting is Thursday, September 18th from 5 to 7. Park entrance, and it's at SeaWorld. Park entrance starts at 4 p.m. The meeting is from 5 to 7. You may bring one guest and you can enjoy the park after 7 p.m. to close. The meeting will consist of networking, recap of the Florida League of Cities Conference, and discuss regional solutions to governing challenges. So I hope that you all can attend. With that, the meeting is adjourned.